You know, if there's one question I get asked more than any other, more even than if you had to live in a fictional place, would you rather stay in Hogwarts or Narnia? That question would have to be, Mark, is Nikon's E Series 75 to 150mm f3.5 manual focus zoom lens the greatest bargain in telephoto photography, or is it just a pallid pretender that can't hope to compete with the big boys of Nikon? Well, today we're going to try and answer that question. Let me talk a bit about Colombo. That's Colombo with an O, not with a U, though it did have me in it for a brief period last month. This place is alive in the way that a compost bin is alive. And that's not a criticism. There is something real, organic and nutritious about the place. It's hard to describe, but maybe it has something to do with the resilience of a diverse group of people that have survived colonization, civil war, economic crises, and shonky nepotistic presidents. Not that shonky nepotistic presidents are the unique providence of Sri Lanka, of course, but it's an exciting, even visceral place, teeming with people and bursting with sights, sounds, and smells. Just the right recipe for street photography. Of course, I woke up with a cold on the one morning I had free, but I still thought, hey, if I'm going to be a sweaty, snotty corpse of a human being, I may as well drag that carcass around the center of Colombo, and I may as well do it with a Nikon 75 to 150mm lens attached to my Nikon FE and a couple of rolls of Kentmere 100. In the middle of a hot day, of course, you know how it is, mad dogs and Englishmen. After taking one quick photo of the hotel corridor, I headed down to the lobby and then out into the steamy streets. Don't let the languid background music and the banal nature of the photographs fool you. This was not a gentle walk through the park, but I still managed to get through the first roll of film unscathed and with a couple of decent shots among the random snapping. The 75-150 isn't a natural fit for the street, so it did allow me to pick out the details, and its focal range forced me to maintain a comfortable distance both physically and emotionally. The lens was originally released in 1980 to accessorize the Nikon EM SLR camera. I have two of those cameras. One is in the custodianship of my daughter, who prefers it to the Nikon FE because it's small and light, and the limited aperture priority only functionality and beeping to warn you when you're underexposing make it much more foolproof in her hands than something with manual options and lots of dials. This is my other one that was gifted by a colleague, but occasionally seems to miss a frame when I try to use it, so it's sitting in the to fix basket at the moment. Not the fault of the camera, but potentially pointing to the lesser build quality that the Nikon E Series was known for. That's true for the lens as well as for the camera. Nikon were too scared to put their Nikkor label on it, though it's still called Nikon. But this is the scoot to your Singapore Airlines, and it came with the promise of cheaper price tag, albeit at the expense of any luggage, food, or the ability to actually recline your seat. Actually though, for this lens at least, not talking about budget airlines now, you could be forgiven for mistaking it for a more rarefied optic. The build quality is surprisingly good. It has heft weighing in at over 500 grams, and that makes sense because other than a few bits of plastic here and there, this is mostly all metal and glass, putting the quality of more recent optics to shame. Downsides, well, it has a few. The design does raise a few usability issues. The lens uses a combined push-pull-rotate mechanism, which is touted as a fast option, since ostensibly you can focus and zoom at the same time. But in practice, well, it's very fiddly. I found that I tried to nudge one, it would always knock the other out a bit, so effectively it meant that I would zoom and focus, then fine-tune zoom, and then focus again before taking the shot, and hoping that in focusing I hadn't knocked it out of the correct focal length. I think that's made worse in this copy by the zoom creep. It's an old lens now, and it slips and slides like an overweight geriatric trying to get out of the bath. Hold the lens like this and the barrel slides down rudely, though fortunately it doesn't trombone like some other zooms I've owned. I've heard sticking some gaffer tape onto the inner sheath is an effective fix. I haven't done that yet, but maybe I should because I did lose focus and framing a couple of times. Other than that significant usability quirk, and despite its weight, it's still a very capable carry-round lens. Like most E-series lenses, it's surprisingly small, and that's probably its greatest appeal. If you can live with 150mm, it's a great travel zoom for your manual Nikon. That's certainly the reason why I was carrying it that day, and just as well, because one roll in and I was exhausted. Time to rewind and unwind, taking a short break to chow down on a samosa and reticulate my desiccated cadaver. Yes, those dark patches on my shirt are sweat. Unlike either my dog or Prince Andrew, I'm actually capable of sweating, and my glands got a good workout. There were times that I was panting and my tongue was lolling. Not sure I'm still talking about my dog or Prince Andrew here, but I digress. I soon got to loading another roll of Kentmere 100s, slowly crawling back to my air-conditioned hotel, taking some photos along the way. Two rolls of film with the Nikon Series E 75 to 150mm lens, and what do you think? Let me know in the comments down below, and of course like, subscribe and ring that bell to keep me coming back to post more like a slobbering Pavlovian dog addicted to the dopamine of your feedback, because I'm sure as hell not doing it for the money. No, it's lenses like this that keep me on the photography YouTube merry-go-round, and with this one I rode that pony until I nearly puked. That could have been the heat and humidity though. The lens consists of 12 elements in 4 groups, which was touted as a simple low-cost design, but it still looks pretty complex to me. But really, given its age and the fact that it's a zoom from an era where most zooms were mediocre at best, it's definitely capable of great results. If you look at images like this, you can see that when it's sharp, it's really sharp. The fact that not every single image is like this is the real takeaway here. Because if you look at this similar one, I definitely missed the mark here. Whether it's camera shake or focus, the reality is if you can't take a good photo with this lens, it's probably your fault as a photographer. That's certainly true in this case, where there were some definite duds among the decent shots that can only be attributed to the one uncontrollable variable in this process. Yes, that's me. That's the problem with optical and in-body image stabilization these days. We're all used to being able to hand-hold our ultra telephoto astrophotography. And the fact is that at 150mm, you should really be shooting this at 250th of a second or faster. Add to that the fact that you're trying to wrangle focus at the same time as zoom on a split prism viewfinder with the inherent shallow depth of field from telephoto, and inevitably, as in this example, you're going to be off a little or even miss some shots completely. At least that's my excuse. Blame me, not the Nikon 75 to 150. Perhaps the shining moment of this lens was when Galen Roll took his famous rainbow over the Patala Palace. He photographed the Dalai Lama's winter home in Lhasa in 1981, and you can find it in his illustrations of the Dalai Lama's book My Tibet. Well, my Colombo was less of a philosophical journey, and let's be honest, my photographs might lack a little bit of that mystery and charm, but I will say that the lens itself has plenty of both. It's definitely intriguing to think that Nikon's version of a budget lens has found its way into the hands of professional photographers and has actually built a reputation for itself as a very capable performer. Mild barrel distortion at the wide angle, mild pin cushioning at telephoto. This isn't going to wreck the straight lines of your architecture. The vignetting is noticeable at f3.5 but gone by f8, so didn't really impact those photos taken on a reasonably bright day as here. Yes, it flares, and you'd certainly lose contrast if you pointed it directly to the sun, but it's not something I've found generally to be a problem. I didn't use a lens hood, and it wasn't an issue here. The fact is, even in my less experienced hands, I managed to get a few keepers. So let's find 6 sapphires in the Sri Lankan photographic sludge as proof that this little zoom is a more than capable lens for your Nikon camera. And here they are, leaning in as always to those things that I found humorous, human, and maybe even just a bit different from my own insular existence. I had to include at least one photo of crows, as mundane and familiar as they are to Western Australia, they did seem to define the side streets of central Colombo. But mostly I just included those photos that came out remotely sharp. Look, despite its colonial past, Colombo isn't the imperiousness of Hogwarts, and it's far too hot for Narnia, though they do have Aslan on their flag, so who knows. Mostly though, the thing that strikes me about it is that it's a real living city. No fiction, imperfect but fun and fascinating, much like this lens. And if I didn't do either the city or the Nikon 75 to 150mm justice in this video, then really the failure is mine. Specifically, my failure to squint through my sweat-beaded eyes and bring focus and a steady hand to a short walk through this amazing place. Later.